are tuned in to Strengthen the Soul podcast, a safe place for learning and growing. I am here to help you navigate through life's greatest challenges. I am Katie, your host, a licensed social worker, therapist, intuitive empath, a healer who's healed herself, and I'm here to help you strengthen your soul. We are all beautiful souls in this life. We are healing, we are living, and we are loving. My mission is to bring awareness to all things mental health, provide motivation and information, and discuss mental wellness and spirituality. Thank you for listening. Welcome to another episode of Strengthen the Soul podcast. This beautiful episode was created with Glen Park and myself. We talk all about her recent book, Chakra Healing Therapy, Awaken Spiritual Energies and Heal Emotional Wounds. I recently was connected to Glen through one of my friends, and I am just so grateful I was able to connect with her. She is such a wealth of knowledge, and her perspective on energy healing and chakra healing therapy was so wonderful to tap into through recording this episode. So I want to tell you a little bit about her book. In this in-depth guide to working with the chakras, author Glen Park draws on her decades of experience as a chakra therapist to explain how the chakras can be understood as an embodied map of the psyche, with each chakra representing a different stage of development from infancy and childhood through adulthood, with the heart chakra playing a central role in awakening the spiritual potential of the upper chakras. She examines each chakra individually on the physical, psychological, psychic, and spiritual levels, as well as through the lens of the lunar, solar, and central energy channels. She shows how the connections between the chakras and developmental stages are paralleled in the findings of Western psychology and neuroscience, and how our collective expressions of the chakras influence cultural trends in society. The author's system of chakra therapy integrates healing touch with guided chakra visualizations, offering practical exercises to nurture and balance each chakra so it can be integrated and in harmony with the entire chakra system. She explores how to work with the heart chakra for deep transformation and self-healing, including healing emotional wounds from childhood and enabling the psychic and spiritual levels of the throat and eye chakras to develop, with the potential of opening to the divine realm of the crown chakra. Sharing case studies from her chakra healing therapy practice, she shows how we gain a richer understanding of ourselves, both mentally and physically, by working with the chakras, opening ourselves to the potential for deep soul growth and transformation. The reason why I started the Embodiment Chakra series is because I wanted to look at healing in a different way. For those of you who don't know, I am a licensed therapist and I've been a social worker for 11 years. I have worked in the industry of healing in more of a systematic and therapeutic approach. And as of recently, within the last year, I took my spirituality and I integrated it into my career, and I got certified in Holy Fire Reiki, which is energy healing. And it got me into really learning more about the power of healing our chakra system, healing energetically as an energetic being, and how our energy connects to our mind, our body, and our whole humanness and spiritual selves all together as one complete system. And by tapping into chakra healing therapy, you are healing so much of yourself through the mind, body, and soul, through tapping into the energy work. It's been so powerful to learn more about energy healing on this journey as I'm recording this podcast, and how truly healing your chakras and all the things that are connected through the chakras opens you up to a beautiful, more healed and transformed version of who you are as a soul in this human form. So I'm so looking forward to you guys tapping into this energy on this podcast with Glen and I. It was such a pleasure to connect with her. So stay tuned.
Okay, so the way I got into working with the chakras, getting to know about the chakras, actually came out of the fact that I was working in the theatre as an actress and script writer in a small theatre company that was Arts Council supported, and I got unwell and felt I was suffering from burnout. And as a result of that, decided to train in the Alexander technique. Do you know what that is?
I don't.
No. So, okay. So the Alexander technique was something that had helped me in my years of being an actress because I suffered from recurring sciatica and sacroiliac pain. And the Alexander technique teaches you how to move in a way that's really good for your body, that builds strength and balance. And at the same time, it works in a healing way, releasing muscles. So Alexander teachers work very gently with their hands, healing the muscles, but also teaching you how to move in a way that's good for you. And it solved my back problems.
Wow.
So deciding I was no longer well enough to work in the theatre, I thought I will train as an Alexander technique teacher. I had 6 months to wait for that training, and I was lucky enough to get an Arts Council grant to visit the States and look at small theatre companies in the States, fringe theatre companies. So I was traveling around the States for 4 months, ending up in California, where the friend I was staying with that said, you know, you really ought to have a psychic reading. Now, this was the beginning of the New Age world that was growing, and it was a lot more developed in America and California than it was in the UK. So I looked a bit skeptical. I said, okay, I went along for this reading, and she, you know, the way I introduced myself, she picked up I was skeptical.
Right.
And she began the reading, and she said, look, I'm really surprised. I wasn't expecting this. But looking at your aura and chakras, you are extremely psychic. And the trouble is, you don't know how to look after yourself psychically, and you're picking up a lot of negative energy. And that explained the burnout.
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yes. And so she said, you need to learn how to protect yourself. Well, at the time, I was still quite skeptical, came back to the UK, began training as an Alexander teacher, which is an extremely gentle training where you get lots of this gentle hands-on work. And my psychic awareness grew and grew. I began to see auras. I began to have very powerful psychic experiences. And I thought, oh gosh, that woman was right. You know, that woman in California was right.
Yes.
So off I went to train in the UK. And that's when I learned about the chakras.
Wow.
I then was completing my training in the Alexander technique. It's a 3-year training. And in the last year, I came over to California again to help with some courses we were running in the States. And I thought, right, I'm going to contact this woman and see what I ought to do next about this. And managed to do that. And she advised me to contact the person who trained her. I contacted him, and he had a free week, and he gave me an intensive week of teaching around the different levels of the chakras. There is a level at which it connects to the physical body. There's a psychological level of the chakras. There's a psychic level of each chakra, and there's a spiritual level. And he was teaching all these and giving me psychic readings. He got people coming in, and I had to read their chakras and so on.
Wow.
And so in a week, I went from a very, basic knowledge of the chakras into a really in-depth. And at the end of the week, he said to me, you really ought to focus on the chakra work because you're going to do something important with the chakras. And I think the book that I've written, Chakra Healing Therapy, was what he was talking about. He was a brilliant clairvoyant, and I think he saw that happening 30 years later.
Wow. So
So,
incredible.
so that's how I started my journey into the chakras. I then carried on as an Alexander teacher, and what I was finding was that the gentle work that I was doing with people would cause emotional releases. Sometimes somebody would cry when I was releasing musculature. Sometimes an emotional memory would surface of a trauma. Shall I give you an example? I was working with this lovely man who came to me with his back had kind of developed in a slightly deformed way. The lumbar vertebrae were all crushed together.
Oh, wow.
And he was significantly shorter than an average man. You know, he was a very short in stature, which didn't fit with his width.
Right.
And I was working as an Alexander teacher to release the spine because he was in pain and discomfort with this as well. And we were working away to get release into the spine. And he suddenly had this emotional memory surface of being a child out in a playground with his grandfather, and he fell off the slide, a very tall slide, and
Wow.
hurt himself. And his granddad said, "Get back up that slide down again." This poor little kid wanted to cry and wanted to be comforted, and he was told, "This is the British stiff upper lip." You know, get up and do it again and stop being frightened of it.
Right.
And that man, he said, "That's what's caused the problem in my spine." That was the memory of trauma. And he was convinced that had been the problem. Well, from then on, I worked both with the spine and with the sacral chakra, which links to childhood. And we got him out of discomfort. That helped the thing to work a lot better. We got
Wow.
this man out of discomfort, working at both the physical and the psychological level.
So
So,
incredible.
yeah, so that's an example of, and so I thought, I've got to be able to work with the chakras as well as the Alexander technique, which was much more physically based. And so I developed the chakra therapy that I would introduce when somebody had an emotional response. And then some people started to come just for chakra therapy, some people just for Alexander technique, some people for both. And so it went on. And out of that, I felt I've got to, after 30 years of teaching this, I've got to start telling people what I've learned. I've got to share it. And that's why I wrote the book.
I love that story. Yeah, I
Thank
truly
you.
feel like that power of healing truly finds you when you're ready. I mean, that's how I
Yeah.
feel about my life. And I've been a therapist and social worker for 10 years now. And then all of a sudden I found this powerful healing modality that's completely transformed my life. And I see the power of it, like you said, when I'm working with somebody on my Reiki table and all of a sudden they start crying. And even with me, every time that I've received a Reiki session, I've had these powerful, powerful healing sessions where I'm crying or having these visuals. And I'm like, wow, it's next level healing, I call it.
Yes, it's very powerful.
Yeah, I love that. So I would love to hear you talk more about what's in your book.
Okay, so what I could do is very quickly explain the chakras to
Yeah. No,
as I've seen them and as I've worked with them.
yeah.
Um, um, just to the chakras come from the ancient Hindu tradition, where in the early writings about the chakras that they were called divine energies of consciousness,
Mm,
and clairvoyants who can see them as rotating wheels. The word chakra in Sanskrit means a wheel or a disc or something circular, and the clairvoyants will see these rotating wheels
mhm,
at the different spots in the spine. So that's the origin of the chakras, and the chakras connect the physical body, the psychological body, and the deeper psychic and spiritual levels of ourselves. So they bring everything together. The base chakra, or the root chakra, it's called, is in Sanskrit it means root support, and it's the earliest chakra to develop. I see the chakras as developmental. So the first chakra to develop and to be dominant is the base chakra. It's connected to our reptilian brain. It's about instinctual consciousness, the brainstem, the very oldest part of the evolved human brain.
Wow.
And I call this chakra our inner animal. It rules all our instinctual processes. It governs the time that we're in the womb, when we make this extraordinary transition from sort of tadpole to human being,
Right.
all sorts of stages of evolution, and then to through the birth process and into the first year or so of life. This instinctual consciousness is dominant, and then there's a sort of competing for dominance with the next chakra, which is the sacral chakra, and that's dominant in childhood. I call that our inner child. And that's when that purely instinctual staying alive consciousness starts to be taken over by this little creature, this little person. It's the beginning of the person, really, where you start to see it at about 3 months in a baby, when they actually respond to your smiles and everything. You can see there's some response coming through, rather than just this focus on staying alive. And it's a very emotional, sensual consciousness, where again, the Sanskrit word for this means the home of the self.
Wow.
So it's where we grow the beginnings of our personality. And what we're looking for is we're wanting to feel loved, we're wanting to feel that we belong, and we want to be happy. We're looking for pleasure and happiness. So we're exploring this world outside of us through all the senses. We want to touch, taste, smell, listen, look. This is the early childhood. And the most important thing about the world out there, of course, are the parents, the siblings, the carers. So we're wanting to relate. And so it's a terribly important developmental stage of our chakra development, this inner child. And of course, it can be a stage where we experience huge wounds. Things can go terribly wrong. Things can go terribly right. We can have great gifts. We can have great wounds. We can have a bit of both. And the chakra gets programmed. This second chakra gets programmed during childhood. The important thing is that as adults, we need to take care of our inner child. We need to keep looking after that part of it. Just wants to enjoy a nice meal, a nice drink, a lovely, beautiful, fragrant flowers, nice walks in the country, beautiful paintings. These are all simple, sensual pleasures that we all enjoy. So looking after the inner child and looking after the people in our life that we feel we belong to, the people we're close to. This is part of how we look after our inner child as an adult. And then in adolescence, something different starts to happen. There's a new chakra competing for dominance with that sacral chakra. And alongside of that, there's something very important happening inside the brain. The prefrontal cortex of the brain starts to change. It starts to get more efficient during adolescence. It gets covered in myelin, which makes all the nerves move a lot faster inside the head. So, and thinking becomes much more important, rather than the more emotional, sensual feeling that's dominant in childhood. And the prefrontal cortex is where it's our executive part of the brain. It's where we plan. It's where we make decisions. It's where we inhibit our emotions and our actions. It's where we can stop and think, no, I'm not going to do that. So it's where we talk about delayed gratification rather than instant gratification. It's where we study for exams, or we learn skills, and we start to work out what kind of an adult we're going to be. So it's a very important shift in that growing of the separate self. It's the first 3 chakras, the lower chakras, grow the separate self. The sort of slightly the downside of all this is that it's where, because we're thinking a lot, we're judging whether we've done well or not, and we create an inner critic in these years where it can be way too harsh, depending often on how our parents have criticized us and so on.
1000%.
Yeah. So one of the problems you can have from your third chakra is this too harsh inner critic that doesn't allow us to expand and become the beautiful person that we've the potential to be. Again, the Sanskrit meaning for this chakra is City of Jewels. And if you think of young teenagers, young people, they're in the beauty of youth, aren't they? They're so glorious. And when they aren't struggling, they are like this multifaceted gem, a city of jewels, all the many gifts that they can be proud of. Pride is a positive energy of this chakra, where you feel good about what you're doing. One of the things I work with when I'm working on this chakra is to develop a strong inner champion, to develop an inner voice that really can't say anything bad about you. All it can do is say that how well you've done. And for example, I had a client and I was encouraging him to develop this inner critic, and this person in his teenage years had taken drugs and become quite addicted to drugs. And he said, how can my inner champion possibly be positive about the fact that I was a drug addict?
Right.
And I said, well, what would you have done if you hadn't become a drug addict? He said, oh, I'd probably have committed suicide. So I said, well, isn't the inner champion proud of you that you didn't commit suicide? You managed by taking drugs for a while, and now you've stopped. Your inner champion's extremely proud of you. So you have to find a way of finding a voice that can only see what you've done in a positive light. Not that you lose the inner critic, but you persuade the inner critic to become a critical friend.
Right.
Someone who's able to say, actually, you might have been a bit less harsh when you criticize them. They might, but doesn't say it in a way that's destructive to you. So you have that moral voice of the inner critic that can just manage if you go too much in the area of being too proud, if you see what I mean. And then there's a good balance there. So that's your third chakra, your solar plexus chakra, the inner young adult, I call it. And it's a terribly important chakra, very dominant in a lot of adults throughout their lives. It's where we plan, it's where we write the jobs list, it's where we sort of say, in the next 6 months, I'm going to do this. The thinking's very self-directed. It's, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that. It's thinking, but it's very different from the thinking of the eye chakra, which I'll come to in a minute.
Yeah.
So those are that's the ego. We've built the ego now. 3 lower chakras. And then the heart chakra is where something really different starts to happen, because we start to loosen those boundaries of the separate self. We start to feel that we are part of this wonderful natural world. We start to feel filled with love. We feel moved by beauty. There's much deeper emotions in the heart chakra. We get very moved by the beauty of the world, the beauty of art, the beauty of beautiful buildings. We just have a sort of expanded consciousness. We also can be very moved by grief, by compassion, by sad things, much deeper emotions, and it's opening us to a more spiritual self. It's feelings of love, appreciation, and gratitude are the positive feelings that we can develop. And have you heard of the HeartMath Institute?
No, I haven't.
Look it up. It's an American organization, and they've done a lot of research into the organ of the heart, which rules the heart chakra. It is the connected organ. And if you they have measured the electromagnetic field around the heart, and it's about 3 feet away from the body. They can measure a field. So it's like they're starting to measure the aura, or something that seems awfully like the aura.
Yeah.
And the field around the heart is a whole lot bigger than the electromagnetic field around the head. There's this
Incredible.
huge field around the heart. And if we start to feel feelings of love, appreciation, gratitude, beauty, that electromagnetic field expands.
Wow.
We get bigger. We lose being this very boundaried, separate self of the lower chakras. So the heart chakra is terribly important in terms of actually healing ourselves, because what the heart chakra can do is look at the woundedness of the lower chakras, and with that loving, compassionate gaze, that's how we heal ourselves. We accept that we've had difficult times. We accept that we're a bit vulnerable here and there, and that allows healing to occur. It's when we just hate ourselves for it that we can't heal.
Yes.
So the heart chakra, and at an energetic level, it just opens up the whole of the energy system as that huge electromagnetic field of the heart chakra expands. And that allows a lot more. There are two energy flows in the body. There's a flow coming from the earth, very important, feeding the base chakra, the lower chakras, and then up into the heart and up to the crown chakra. And there's a spiritual energy coming down through the top of the crown of the head, down through the chakras, through the body, and going right down into the earth. So we connect the earth and the heavens, so to speak.
Yeah.
And when the heart chakra opens, that downward flow can become much stronger, and we can get peak experiences, we can have inspirational thinking. So it's a real life changer, working to open the heart and function at the heart chakra level. So moving to the upper chakras, the throat chakra is our creative. Oh, I haven't said this. The meaning of the heart chakra, the Sanskrit word, means unwounded.
Oh, beautiful.
And it's where we heal ourselves. It's where it's our inner healer and our inner compassionate witness. And so it means unwounded. When you get that heart moving and working, you heal, you love yourself and you love everybody else.
I love that.
It's wonderful, isn't it? Yeah. And then going up to the throat chakra, which is our creative self-expression, our creative communicator, and that it's the way we communicate with our whole bodies. It's not just the voice, but it is the voice as well.
Yeah.
The meaning of the chakra, the Sanskrit word, interestingly, means purified, which is interesting. It's not communicating, it's purified. The reason being that it's talking about the spiritual level of the throat chakra. And when the heart opens and that spiritual level of the chakras can function, we start to lose all the aspects of our lower chakras where we adapted to fit into the difficulties of the world. And we get back to our true self. This is where we find our true self, our true voice. And so it's the purified voice, the purified self in the throat chakra. At best, I mean, it isn't if the heart chakra is not flowing well. It's just how we communicate, and in that case, we might well be communicated from that woundedness. We might be expressing ourselves in a very wounded way, but if we've opened the heart and expanded, it's a purified voice. It's very prominent in actors, speakers, dancers, musicians, sports people. It's where people express through the whole body.
Yes.
And then going up to the eye chakra, it's our creative thinker, it's our visionary, it's our inspired thinking at a spiritual level. And again, to the Sanskrit word means to command and perceive. So it's because once it's our view of the world, it's our bigger thinking, it's not self-oriented, it's what's the world like out there. Now, if the heart chakra hasn't developed, our view of the world is from the wounded perspective of the lower chakras. Everybody out there's horrid because their parents were horrid, something along those lines.
Right.
But if we've developed that spiritual level, it's how we perceive the world, and it's connected to our capacity to have a positive intention about the world. So if we feel we want to bring love and peace, then we actually have the power to do that at the psychic and spiritual level of the eye chakra. So again, this is the work that the Heart Math Institute is doing. It gets people together to meditate and to send peace and love to the world, so that affects the electromagnetic field of there's actually proof that this affects the electromagnetic field of the world.
Oh yeah, heal
That's
yourself.
quite extraordinary, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, meditators in a US city, there were two experiments, one 5,000 meditators, one 7,000 meditators, sending peace and love to that city. The crime rates came down
Wow.
significantly from that mass meditation focusing on that city. Some US city, I don't know which one.
Mm.
So the potential of influencing the world from a positive perspective is enormous when we evolve to that level of the spiritual level of the eye chakra. Finally, we get to the crown chakra, which is centered in the center of the brain at the pineal gland and comes out through the top of the head.
Mm.
And that's our potential to actually stop identifying with the self altogether. There's the small self of the lower chakras, there's the enlarged and spiritual self of the upper chakras and heart, and then there's the enlightened self that actually identifies with the whole universe
Yes.
and experiences non-dual consciousness. The universe out there is me.
Mm.
It's an extraordinary enlightened experience that spiritual seekers in many disciplines talk about. So that's my run through of the chakras.
Wow, that was life-changing for me. That
Oh wow.
Yes, I mean, just to continue to learn more and to gain this perspective and knowledge from you is so wonderful. I mean, I just learned so much.
Oh, that's lovely. Thank you.
Yeah.
So in the book, I have an introductory chapter where I go quickly through all the chakras,
Mhm.
explaining how I'm planning to work with them for the rest of the book.
Yeah.
And then there's a chapter for each chakra. And in each chapter, I start talking about the physical level of the chakra, then the psychological level of the chakra, which is what I've kind of gone through just
Yeah.
now, then the psychic level of each chakra, and then the spiritual level of each chakra. And also in the psychological level, I link it to theories in developmental psychology and link it to studies in neuroscience. So I try to make the chakras as meaningful to the Western world as I can by showing these links. And then in the last section of the book, I go into chakra therapy,
Mm.
where I show how I've worked with a client. I do a case study for each chakra, and then I give suggestions, experiential exercises that you can do to help each chakra. So each chakra gets that sort of treatment.
Beautiful.
So that's how I work with the book.
Mm.
So if I give an example now, shall I? So
Yeah.
of how I work. So in the base chakra, for example, I had a client come to me who was perfectly healthy and but she had this problem that every time she got the slightest cold or cut herself or any little thing, she thought she was going to die.
Mm.
She had this kind of innate hypochondria that she knew was completely over the top,
Mm.
and she wanted to know what the heck was going on.
Yeah.
So that was the story she gave me, and she said, fine, well, let me see what's happening in your energy system. So she lay on the table. She could only come to see me once because she was visiting from Sweden.
Mm.
She lay on the table and I tuned in, and when I tuned into the base chakra, which you can't touch the base chakra, it's at the pelvic floor. So
Right.
I do it through my hand underneath the sacrum
Mm.
and my hand on her feet and knees and
Mm.
so on. It was like a black hole. The base chakra was, it was sort of sucking energy out of her, if anything. It was,
Wow.
it wasn't feeding the system. And I sort of said, what happened when you did you have difficult birth? What happened when you were a baby?
Mhm.
And she lost her mother when she was a baby, basically.
Oh,
She was
yeah.
brought up by her father. And actually it was worse than that, because it was a divorce in which the father insisted on having the child.
Mm.
Um, and so the we were able to say, I said, look, this is what's causing the hypochondria. This base chakra is about needing very, very primitive things. You need air and food and rest, but you also need safety and security.
Yes.
And then moving into this sacral chakra, you need to feel you're safe. It's the safety and security, really, that
Yeah.
she'd.
Yeah.
And the fact that she now knew that, and she could be kind to herself about that
Mm.
and stop beating herself up about it, really helped to move it forwards for her.
Yes.
So that's, whereas, if she'd gone into counselling about that, yes, they could possibly have got there after several sessions, finding it was linked to that.
Right.
But when you work with the energy, it's just like there's a black hole in the base chakra.
Mm.
Straight away, that's where you've got to work.
Right. Exactly. Like energy speaks so loudly right there and then.
Yeah. I mean, the case study in the sacral chakra was somebody who spent his early childhood living in a little island off Greece,
Mm.
playing in the sand with his friend, talking Greek because he'd got one Greek parent, one English parent, and then at 7 or 8 years old, being sent to boarding school in England, not even his first language.
Oh my goodness.
And imagine the climate change going
Yes.
from Greece to and his second chakra was like numb.
Yeah.
He would
Wow.
have, it was the numbness of that little child, that he had lost his parents, he'd lost his friends on the beach, he'd lost his language. So you pick it, what's going on in this second chakra?
Yeah.
Tell me a bit about your childhood. Yes, and you say, we've really got to work to get you to take care of this inner child, because this inner child had a very bad time when you were 8 years old. Yes, so that's the way that the two things work together.
Beautiful, beautiful. And that's why I just feel so grateful that I've been guided to this healing energy work because myself as a therapist, I can bridge the gap between this therapeutic work and now have this energy healing and really work to transform lives.
Yes, that's lovely.
Yeah. Well, this conversation has been so beautiful and wonderful, and I am so grateful to connect with you, Glenn. Is there anything else that you would like to share with us regarding energy healing or the chakra system?
Can I finish by just telling you a story about one of the most wonderful things that happened in my life that's to do with the heart chakra?
Oh my goodness, I would love that.
Because if you develop the heart chakra, you have the potential for this sort of wonderful experience.
Yeah.
I was going for a walk with a friend on the White Cliffs of Dover. Have you heard of the White Cliffs of Dover? They're quite
Yeah.
famous in the UK. On
Yeah.
the southeast coast, we
Mm.
have these lovely lime cliffs. And the walk that we were on, the cliff was in two parts. So there was a drop into the sea. As we were walking along, on our left, there was a
Mm.
drop into the sea. And then on our right, there was another cliff that rose up quite a long way. And at the top of that cliff, there were several kestrels, which are small hawks that
Mm.
they hover. They can sit in the air and hover, and then they see a mouse or something and they dive down and
Right.
food. So we were enjoying watching these kestrels hunting, and the sea to our left. It was a lovely walk. And then we noticed as we were walking along that sort of a third of the way up this cliff to our right was a kestrel that was sitting on a ledge, and every so often it flopped down to our level, and then it flopped back, seemed, just floated back up to this ledge. And we said, that kestrel doesn't look very well. It doesn't look as though it's got the energy of the other kestrels. So we decided, we were both Alexander teachers as well as my chakra work, and we said, let's send some healing to that kestrel. So we stood there and sent the kestrel healing. And after a few minutes, that kestrel took off and flew up and started to join the other kestrels, hovering at the top of the cliff. Isn't that lovely?
Oh my God, so beautiful.
That's not all.
Oh, wow.
Because then we carried on our walk feeling very pleased. And as I say, try this when you're out in nature. If you see a creature, send it some love and see whether it starts connecting with you. We carried on walking. And my friend turned round and then said, Glen, turn round very slowly. So I turned round very slowly. And there on our path, just a few meters away, was the kestrel.
Oh my goodness.
It had come back and was sitting on the path not far away from us.
I love that.
And so we said, I think we'll send this kestrel some more healing. I think it would like some more.
Yeah.
So we sent more healing to this kestrel. And after a while, it took off and it followed us for the rest of our walk along the cliffs.
Wow.
Isn't that lovely?
That is
so the potential, if you open your heart, for being connected with this wonderful natural world that we're part of.
Yes.
Connecting with other animals. And I noticed you'd done something on the base chakra in one of your talks, connecting to that inner animal that is there connected to the earth and with the heart chakra. There's a wonderful life ahead of you.
Oh my God, beautiful, beautiful. Oh, this was so magical. And it was such a pleasure to work with you. Now, where can everybody find you? Do you have a website? Are you on social media? And where is your book sold?
Okay, my website is glenpark.uk. So that's HTTPS, that's what you put in first.
Yeah.
So it's 8 letters, GLENPARK.UK. That's my website. And there's links to how you can get the book on the website, but the publishers are Inner Traditions, which is an American publisher. So connecting to the Inner Traditions website, you could find the book, or it's on lots of American booksellers' websites as well.
Perfect. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for your time. This was so informative. And do you have any other books out there or working on anything else exciting going on?
I have an earlier book that I wrote about the Alexander technique, but I wrote that book about 30 years. When was it? Yeah, it is 90. Yeah. 30 years ago. I wrote about the Alexander technique. So that's still around. That's called The Art of Changing, and that's on my website.
Oh, beautiful. I'll have to check that out.
But the book, the Chakra Healing Therapy, is only just published. So no, I'm not planning to write anything else for quite a while.
Yeah, it was a really good informative book. It's pretty hefty.
It took a few years to write.
Yeah, I would recommend that book to anybody. It's incredible.
That's lovely. Thank you very much.
Of course.